Saturday night in Berlin. The lights inside the Steffi Graf Stadium burned bright against the dark German sky, casting long shadows across the grass court as thousands of fans leaned forward in anticipation. The atmosphere felt electric. Cameras flashed from every angle. Every seat seemed alive with tension. And at the center of it all stood 21-year-old Alex Eala. 2 hours later, she walked off that same court defeated. 6-2, 6-4. Straight sets. The semi-final was over. Her remarkable run at the Berlin Open had come to an end. For most people, that was the story. A young wild card makes a surprising run, loses before the final, and the tennis world moves on to the next headline. But if you stop there, you miss the real story completely, because something about that loss didn't make sense. Just 48 hours earlier, Alex Eala had beaten the world number 2. The very next day, she beat the world number 8. Back-to-back victories. Back-to-back nights. Almost no recovery time in between. 2 elite players. 2 entirely different styles. 2 women who had spent years being feared by everyone else on tour. And somehow, the one left standing after both battles was the unseeded Filipino wildcard nobody expected to survive the week. So, before talking about the loss to Linda Noskova, there's a more important question worth asking. Why did this defeat suddenly become bigger news than most victories? To answer that, you have to understand what Alex Eala was actually supposed to be doing in Berlin in the first place. Because a wild card is not what people think it is. Fans love to romanticize wild cards as hidden opportunities, golden tickets handed to future stars waiting to explode onto the scene. But inside professional tennis, wild cards are usually something much simpler. A courtesy invitation. You get a spot because tournament organizers see potential. Maybe they like your story. Maybe they believe you could attract interest. Maybe they want to reward recent form. But very few people genuinely expect a wild card to destroy the draw. The unwritten script is always the same. Show up. Gain experience. Maybe steal one good win. Then quietly disappear before the tournament reaches its serious stages. That was supposed to be Alex Eala's week in Germany. Low expectations. No pressure. No spotlight. The kind of invisible status where commentators struggle to pronounce your name correctly during the first round because they don't expect to say it again afterward. And strangely enough, that invisibility became her greatest weapon. Because elite players prepare differently for threats. Top seeds study each other obsessively. Coaching teams spend hours analyzing patterns, weaknesses, tendencies, serve locations, return positions. But wild cards? Most of the time, they're treated like formalities. Nobody spends sleepless nights preparing for someone they assume will lose quickly. Nobody expects danger from a name sitting quietly at the bottom of the draw sheet. So Alex Eala entered Berlin largely unscouted, unseeded, unnoticed. And that gave her something extremely dangerous. Freedom. Freedom to swing without fear. Freedom to attack without hesitation. Freedom to play tennis without carrying the suffocating pressure that usually crushes young players the moment they step onto courts this big. Then came Elena Rybakina, world number 2, Wimbledon champion, Australian Open champion, one of the most terrifying servers in women's tennis. The kind of player who can end rallies before opponents even settle into rhythm. The kind of player who makes matches feel hopeless within minutes. And for the opening stretch, everything looked exactly the way people expected. Rybakina exploded out of the gate. Aces. Flat winners. First strike tennis. The scoreboard moved quickly in her favor, and the early momentum felt overwhelming. The stadium settled into that familiar assumption elite tennis crowds develop when a favorite takes control early. This will end soon. This is where the wild card learns the difference. But then something shifted. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Quietly. Almost invisibly. Alex Eala stopped reacting to the moment and started controlling it. And that change altered everything. Instead of trying to overpower Rybakina, she absorbed the pace. Redirected it. Forced one extra shot into every rally. That sounds simple when said out loud. It isn't. Against a server like Rybakina, surviving is difficult enough. Extending rallies against her requires absurd timing and extraordinary composure. Because the temptation against overwhelming power is always the same. Swing harder.
Rush. Panic.
Try to match violence with more violence. But Eala didn't do that. She trusted her hands, trusted her movement, trusted the geometry of the court. Point after point, she simply kept getting the ball back deep enough to force Rybakina into uncomfortable rallies. And slowly, the match changed shape. The world number 2 stopped looking invincible. Then she stopped looking comfortable. Then suddenly, unbelievably, she started looking vulnerable. Straight sets. Alex Eala defeated Elena Rybakina in straight sets on grass. That sentence alone changed the trajectory of her career. Because wins like that do not happen by accident. You don't accidentally beat one of the best grass court players in the world. You don't accidentally solve a serve that has destroyed elite opponents for years. You don't accidentally survive those moments unless somewhere deep inside yourself, you already believe you belong there. And that's the most important part of this entire story. Belief, not confidence. Confidence comes and goes. Belief is different. Belief is what allows a player to stand across the net from greatness and not flinch. Most young players never fully develop that feeling, even highly talented ones. Somewhere inside them exists a quiet assumption that eventually the better player will take over. You can see it in body language, a slower walk between points, a rushed second serve, a nervous forehand during pressure moments. The unconscious behavior of someone already preparing emotionally for defeat before it arrives. Alex Eala did not carry that energy against Rybakina. She looked calm, not because she knew she would win, but because she had stopped being intimidated by the possibility of losing. And that distinction changes everything. Then came the next challenge. Less than 24 hours later. No real recovery. No time to emotionally process the biggest victory of her career. No opportunity to mentally reset. Just another match. Another elite opponent. Another mountain waiting immediately in front of her. Elena Svitolina, world number 8. A completely different kind of problem. Where Rybakina overwhelms players physically, Svitolina suffocates them mentally. She stretches rallies, tests patience, punishes hesitation. She forces opponents into uncomfortable decisions until frustration breaks them apart. Young players especially struggle against her because she understands pressure at a terrifyingly sophisticated level. She probes for weakness, not just technical weakness, emotional weakness, nervousness,
Doubt. Fear.
and early in that match, it looked like she might finally expose those cracks in Eala. Every point became a grind. Momentum shifted repeatedly. The rallies lengthened. The emotional intensity increased. This wasn't power tennis anymore. This was psychological warfare. And somehow, Alex Eala handled it. Every time Svitolina raised the pressure, Eala answered. Every time the veteran tried to drag the match into uncomfortable territory, the young Filipino responded with composure far beyond her years. That's what made the victory so shocking. Not just that she won, but how differently she won compared to the Rybakina match. Against one opponent, she solved overwhelming pace. Against the other, she survived suffocating mental pressure. Two entirely different tactical problems. Two entirely different emotional demands. Solved on consecutive nights. That is not luck. That is not a hot streak. That is a player discovering in real time exactly how high her ceiling might actually be. By the time Saturday arrived, everything had changed. The cameras that ignored her during the first round suddenly followed her everywhere. Media outlets that barely mentioned her name earlier in the week now pushed notifications about her matches. Fans who had never watched her before were searching highlights at 2 in the morning trying to understand who she was. The atmosphere transformed completely. And so did the expectations. Suddenly, Alex Eala was no longer the charming underdog story. She became dangerous. And dangerous players create a different kind of pressure. Because once you prove you can beat elite opponents, people stop celebrating effort. Now they expect more. Now they wonder how far you can actually go. Now every match carries the weight of possibility. Then came Linda Noskova.
Fresh.
Aggressive. Powerful. And most importantly, rested. that mattered more than people realized. Because by Saturday night, Alex Eala wasn't battling class differences anymore. She was battling exhaustion. And there's a critical difference between those two things. Noskova did not expose a lack of talent. She exposed the brutal cost of what Eala had already accomplished earlier in the week. Back-to-back wins over top, 10 players leave damage behind. Not visible damage, but physical and emotional depletion that accumulates quietly. Heavy legs, slightly slower reactions, tiny hesitations that don't exist when energy levels are full. At this level, matches are often decided by fractions. Half a second, one late step, one rush swing, one tiny dip in focus. Against fresh elite opponents, those tiny drops become fatal. That's what happened Saturday night. Alex Eala wasn't suddenly a worse player than the one who beat Rybakina and Svitolina. She was the exact same player with significantly less left in the tank. And Noskova sensed it immediately. From the first few games, she attacked relentlessly. Short points, aggressive returning, constant pressure, no room to breathe, no opportunity for Eala to settle physically into the match. And eventually, the accumulated cost of the previous two nights became impossible to fully overcome. 6-2, 6-4. The dream run ended one match short of the final. But reducing Berlin to she lost in the semifinals completely misses what actually happened there. Because before this week, Alex Eala still lived in the future tense of tennis conversations. Promising, talented, potential, someday, eventually, maybe. Berlin erased all of that. You do not call someone a future star after she defeats a world number 2 on grass. You do not describe someone as potential after they follow it with another top 10 victory 24 hours later. At some point, results stop being projections and become proof. That week in Berlin was proof. Proof that Alex Eala already belongs among elite competition. Proof that her game translates to the biggest stages. Proof that her mentality holds under enormous pressure. And perhaps most importantly, proof to herself. Because belief changes permanently once it's earned. A player who has beaten top opponents before never walks onto those courts feeling exactly the same again. That experience lives inside the body, inside the hands, inside the nervous system. The next time Eala faces someone ranked in the top 5, she will no longer wonder whether she belongs. She already knows. She's already done it. That matters more than almost any ranking jump. Belief compounds over time. Quietly, gradually, then suddenly all at once. It appears later in moments most people never connect back to tournaments like Berlin. A calm service game deep in a third set. A fearless return during a tiebreak. A confident walk onto center court against another superstar. Those moments are built from experiences exactly like this one. That's why the loss to Noskova, painful as it was, doesn't define the week. The revelations do. And almost every great tennis career contains a tournament exactly like Berlin somewhere in its history. Not necessarily a title, not necessarily a trophy, but a turning point. A week where a player stops wondering whether they belong at the highest level and discovers, publicly and undeniably, that they already do. That's what Berlin became for Alex Eala. A revelation. And now comes Wimbledon. Same surface, bigger stage, greater pressure, far more attention, but also a completely different version of Alex Eala walking into it. The wild card nobody prepared for no longer exists. Now opponents know exactly what she's capable of. Now coaches will study her patterns. Now players will take her seriously. And strangely enough, that may be the most important transformation of all. Because respect changes the psychology of matches before they even begin. Before Berlin, elite players looked across the net and saw a promising young wild card. Now they see someone who already defeated top 10 opponents on grass weeks before the biggest grass tournament in the world. That changes preparation. That changes expectations. That changes fear. She leaves Berlin without lifting the trophy. But every once in a while, tennis gives a player something far more dangerous than silverware. Conviction. The tested, undeniable understanding that she can stand across the net from the very best in the world and win. Alex Eala arrived in Berlin as an afterthought. She left as a threat, and that may end up mattering far more than the title itself.